In the scorched breath of the desert, beyond the towering statues of forgotten gods, and beneath the golden mask of a civilization obsessed with eternity, there existed a silence more ancient than stone, more enduring than time itself. It was the silence of the dead, but not just any dead. It was the silence of the women whose mouths had been sealed shut with golden thread, before their bodies were wrapped in linen and offered to the black womb of the earth. You see, in modern times, death is a gentle notion, a closing of the eyes. But in the era of pharaohs, death was not an end. It was a negotiation, a transaction, a passage into a world where the living dared not speak. And for women, death carried a second burden. Not merely the departure from life, but the obligation to take a secret with them into the dark. A secret that could not, under any condition, be spoken neither to the living nor to the gods. The practice began during the reign of Pharaoh Neferhotep II. In the 13th dynasty, a time not often spoken of in your history books. He was a paranoid ruler, one who feared not enemies from the outside, but whispers from within. His court was a nest of serpents' wives, priestesses, and concubines who, it was said, held in their tongues the power to unmake dynasties. They were educated, elegant, and dangerous. Their voices, soft as reed flutes, had the potential to move armies or poison kings. Neferhotep, obsessed with omens and shadows, began to fear that when his women died, they would whisper to the gods the truths they dared not speak in life. Truths of betrayal, of ritual desecration, of children never meant to be born. In the Book of the Dead, there is a lesser-known passage, scratched into the corner of a tomb wall in Saqqara, that reads, "The dead woman speaks thrice, once to the soul, once to the gods, once to vengeance." So the pharaoh decreed, no woman of his bloodline, nor any woman who had lain with the divine, should be allowed to speak after death. Their mouths were to be sewn shut, first with linen thread, then in more sacred burials with filaments of beaten gold. It was not a punishment, it was a preservation, a containment, a denial of confession. The ritual was done in shadow, not by embalmers, but by priestesses of the cult of Mat, blindfolded and veiled in black. They would insert a curved needle carved from ibex bone through the corners of the deceased's lips, stitching them tight like the edge of a wound. Then, they would whisper into the sealed mouth a final prayer, "Let the lie sleep with her." The sarcophagus was then marked with a single glyph, etched not with ink but blood, the sigil of the silent wife. One such woman was Khenemet, high priestess and consort of Neferhotep. Her sarcophagus was discovered in 1924 in an unopened chamber beneath the Temple of Dendera. Her body was pristine, wrapped in 23 layers of cloth. Her hands folded in a peculiar pose, one over her heart, the other pressed over her lips. When British archaeologist Harold Danforth attempted to open her mouth during examination, a strange thing occurred. The linen around her jaw remained stiff, as if frozen in time, and when he finally cut the threads, a rush of dry air escaped as though something had been held in for centuries. Danforth reported hearing a faint humming sound, not unlike the moan of wind through a cave. His assistant claimed she saw the walls darken for a moment, as if a shadow had passed behind her eyes. Within a week, Danforth was dead. Internal bleeding, no sign of trauma. His notes ended with one cryptic line: "She didn't want to be heard." The world moved on. The tomb was resealed. The artifacts archived and forgotten. But the question remains, why? Why go to such lengths to keep a dead woman from speaking? What did they fear she might say? It is easy to dismiss such things as superstition. But history is not merely what is written, it is what is hidden, what is feared, what is ritually erased. The sewn lips of Egypt's sacred women were more than ceremonial. They were warnings. Locks on the doors of the past, and some locks are not meant to be opened. Before she became a whisper in a tomb, Khenemet was a woman of immense presence. Her name, which means she who joins the divine, was given not by a mother, but by decree of the temple chosen, as a child for her beauty, her poise, and most importantly, her silence. She never cried, they said, not even once, even when her milk teeth were pulled at the age of 5 as an offering to Hathor. It was then they knew she would be more than just a vessel, she would be a vault. At 17, Khenemet was chosen as consort to Pharaoh Neferhotep. But her role was not one of romance. She was not to birth heirs or warm his bed. She was to listen. The pharaoh, for all his cruelty, trusted her more than his generals. He told her everything: his dreams, his omens, his visions of the dead walking beneath the palace. She heard of betrayals yet to come, poisons hidden in the wine cellars, sacrifices conducted in secret to awaken ancient powers even priests dared not name. Khenemet kept every secret until the day she made one of her own. There was a servant, a scribe named Ipu, younger, gentle, unscarred by politics or ritual. He taught her to write not in hieroglyphs, but in symbols hidden within embroidery, music, and dance. It was through Ipu that she learned the language of resistance. They met in the outer gardens under the guise of stargazing. There she told him everything what she had heard, what she had seen, and the one truth that, if revealed, could unravel the pharaoh's line. The pharaoh had murdered his father not through blade, but through forgetting. He had ordered every image of his father chiseled off temple walls, erased his name from every cartouche. In Egyptian belief, to be forgotten was the final death. It was the only crime worse than regicide, and only Khenemet knew, because only Khenemet had stood behind the curtain that night, clutching her golden veil in silence, as the scribes scraped away the name of a man who once ruled the sun. When the high priests suspected her betrayal, they did not arrest her. They prepared her burial. She was not yet dead, but the tomb was carved, the linen spun, the gold thread weighed and blessed. They told her it was an honor to die in purity, taking sin with her. She wept once, not for herself, but for Ipu, who vanished the next day. His body was never found. Only the tips of his fingers, left on her sleeping mat, one by one. The ritual was held at dawn. She was bathed in milk and rosewater, painted with ochre and myrrh. A procession of priestesses, eyes downcast, led her into the embalming chamber. They did not speak. No one was allowed to speak in her presence, as if her mere breath could infect the air with treason. They laid her on a slab of basalt, beneath an oil lamp that cast her shadow into monstrous shapes. The stitching was done in silence. She was alive when it began. They paralyzed her with the venom of the sand aspartoxin that dulled the body but left the mind aware. They inserted the curved needle through her lips, the golden thread pulled tight, loop after loop, until her mouth became a seal. The priestess assigned to the task, a woman called Khenemet, later confessed in a scroll, now kept in the basement of the British Museum. She wrote, "I have sealed storms behind a smile." Khenemet did not die immediately. She was placed in her sarcophagus while still warm, her blood slow, but moving. The final prayer was whispered, "Let the lie sleep with her." And the lid was closed. But here's what the priests did not know. Khenemet had embroidered her truth into the hem of her burial gown, using the code Ipu had taught her. A confession, a revelation, a curse. If read aloud in full, it would awaken the dead name of the murdered pharaoh. It would reverse the forgetting. And it would damn Neferhotep's soul to the duat, never to rise again. The needle may have closed her mouth, but her story was sewn into the folds of eternity. Centuries passed. The gown remained untouched until 1924. When Harold Danforth unwrapped the linens and stared too long at the patterns in the hem, he did not understand it, not truly, but he read it, silently, to himself. A whisper in the air. 7 days later, he bled from every orifice. Not a mark on his skin, only a curl of gold thread found on his pillow, tied in a perfect loop. The death of Harold Danforth was officially listed as an aneurysm, a clean clinical explanation. But those who handled his body quiet nurses, underpaid assistants, men and women who did not belong to the world of museums and manuscripts, whispered of strange things. His blood had not coagulated. His tongue, though untouched by trauma, was swollen and blackened, as though it had attempted to speak something forbidden in his final breath. Danforth's journals were sealed by the British Museum under the pretense of preserving academic integrity. But a single copy survived, slipped out by a graduate assistant named Eleanor Finch. She was young, brilliant, too curious. Her thesis had been on funerary rites of lesser dynasties. But when she read Danforth's final notes, scrawled in panic, barely coherent, her path bent forever toward darkness. There was one phrase she underlined again and again. The hymn spoke. I only listened. Finch dedicated 5 years of her life to decoding the embroidery on Khenemet's burial shroud. Not just the symbols, but the rhythm. The spaces between stitches. The direction of the weave. What she uncovered was not a single statement, but a sequence, ritual, a map of phonetics. And most chillingly, a list of names pharaohs erased from history, whose tombs had never been found, whose voices had been extinguished by decree. Among them, the forgotten king, father of Neferhotep. According to the embedded code, speaking his name aloud, with full knowledge of his erasure, would invoke the severing. A spiritual rupture, a fracture, in the balance of the world. The name had been exiled, not just from memory, but from time itself. It was a name that had been surgically removed from the mouth of reality. Finch never spoke the name, but she came close. Too close. She began to change. Her colleagues noticed she no longer blinked when spoken to. She walked barefoot through the museum basement after hours, murmuring to herself in languages no one recognized. Surveillance footage now scrubbed from public archives caught her staring directly at the sarcophagus of Khenemet for 7 hours without moving. In the final recording, taken the night before her disappearance, she can be seen unraveling the linen from a preserved piece of the burial gown, holding it to her mouth as if trying to listen to it. She was never seen again. Only her shoes were found, neatly placed beside the sealed chamber. Between them, a single thread of gold, coiled like a question mark. You must understand this is not about curses in the childish sense. It is not about pharaohs striking from the grave, nor undead queens reaching through sarcophagi. It is about memory as weapon. About the terror of a truth so potent, the mere act of remembering it correctly can bend the world. In ancient Egypt, words were not just symbols. They were living entities. To write something was to summon it. To speak it was to give it breath. That is why the dead woman's mouth had to be sealed not for tradition, but containment. The knowledge inside her, if allowed to escape, could realign the river of time, could unmake dynasties, could dethrone gods. A theory surfaced after Finch vanished, whispered among the more esoteric scholars, that Khenemet was not a mere consort or priestess, but a living Volta, chosen vessel to imprison the name of the forgotten king. That when she took it into her heart and wore it in thread against her skin, she became more than mortal. She became the last lock on a cosmic door. And Danforth, Finch? They weren't cursed, they were keys. Each step closer to understanding became an act of unlocking, a breath closer to a whisper that had waited 4,000 years to be heard. The most disturbing part, the code in the hymn, was not complete. A corner of the gown had decayed, the final lines illegible, which meant what was spoken was not the full ritual, not the full truth, which meant the name was not fully released yet. And somewhere deep beneath layers of sand and silence, the rest of that name waits. Waits for someone foolish enough to finish what the dead began. Waits for a voice not yet sealed in gold. Because some truths do not die, they only fall asleep, and the dead woman still dreams. There is a chamber beneath the chamber. It does not appear on maps. It was not documented in Danforth's reports. And yet, in 1987, when a team of restorers began reinforcing the foundation beneath the Temple of Dendera, they discovered a hollow resonance beneath the flora, kind of subecho, as though something vast and empty lay breathing just below the limestone. They dug in silence, not by order, but by instinct. What they uncovered was a second tomb, unmarked, undecorated. The walls smooth, blackened by what appeared to be soot, but upon closer inspection was something older charred ink, as if entire scriptures had been written and then burned from existence. At the center of the chamber was no sarcophagus, no treasure, no icon, only a single woven linen gown suspended in the air by golden threads, anchored at each corner to the ceiling like a spider's web. Beneath it, dust, ash, and something that looked like teeth. A woman named Dr. Rania Salim led the excavation, a linguistic anthropologist fluent in ancient dialects and forgotten tongues. When she saw the gown, she did not blink. She only whispered, "It's not a shroud, it's a net." She was right. The pattern on this second gown mirrored the first, but continued where the first left off. It was the missing fragment, the final verses of the name, woven not in gold but in threads soaked in hematite, a mineral believed by the ancients to hold the essence of blood. Dr. Salim, against protocol, stayed the night alone in the tomb. She recorded herself, leaving a final log in case her funding was pulled. That recording has since been suppressed, but one line survives, a glitchy, corrupted whisper extracted from a failed hard drive. The name isn't a name, it's a sound, a shape made of breath and memory. It folds around your lungs and waits. She too vanished. Her tent remained untouched. The only trace of her body was a faint residue on the ceiling, just above where the golden threads had snapped. Since that night, the linen net has collapsed. No one has dared to rehang it. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities officially denies the chamber's existence. But photos leak. Quiet rumors flow through the dusty corners of academic circles. Some claim the chamber wasn't a burial site at all but a prison. A final cell built not for a body, but for a name. A name that could not be spoken, only forgotten. A name too heavy for the tongue, too sharp for the ear, too loud for time, and still, some try to pronounce it. In online forums hidden behind esoteric codes, occult enthusiasts and digital necromancers have attempted to reconstruct the name from fragments found in museum archives. Audio files circulate, chopped, reversed, warped. Most are hoaxes. But one uploaded in 2019, played only once before the account disappeared, caused widespread device failures in a 6-block radius in Marseille. 3 listeners reported identical dreams that night. A woman with no mouth, reaching toward them with golden fingers, trying to sew their lips shut. They woke up with blood on their pillows. The user's account name, Khenemet 89. Perhaps a coincidence, perhaps not. But let me ask you this. What is memory, if not a ritual? What is a name, if not a spell waiting for a voice? Khenemet was never meant to be remembered. She was meant to carry silence to the other side, to smother a god-sized truth within her gilded mouth. But we remembered her. We opened her tomb. We read her thread. We spoke what was meant to sleep. And now we sew the silence into our own mouths, thread by thread, nightmare by nightmare. Because the name is not done unfolding. Because the dead woman does not rest. It's because secrets, once stitched, do not die. They wait.